everybody, my name is Mariana and you're watching Lucifer's Library. In today's video we are talking about my autumn TBR. I am going to be just checking in because I did finish a few books, so I want to get you started and then I will check in as I progress through it. The first book that I finished was Perfect Illusion by Claudia Tan. You can find it on Kindle. It is enemies to lovers. It is forced engagement, forced proximity kind of book. And yeah, I gave it 4.25 stars. It is a romance book, so it does have some smutty scenes. Moving on, I have also decided one of the books I won't be reading is Anne Boleyn. I just wanted to, but then I just realized I'm not in the mood and I have to read the first book before I get to this one, and I'm just gonna be scratching it off the list entirely. Then I went ahead and tried reading Neon Gods. I finished reading Neon Gods by Katie Robert. I got through it in a day, one day, the entire book, and I rated it 2 stars. My main problem is that this book doesn't know what it is itself. I don't know, this is supposed to be Hades and Persephone retelling, but change their names and they could be any different like character, it doesn't matter. This is like a mafia romance. It's supposed to be like mythology, but not really because they have guns. They're supposed to be Greek gods, but none of them have any powers, and the idea of it was nice, but the execution just didn't go over well, I think, and that makes me really sad. I don't usually like to talk badly about books, but this is just how I felt. And the last book that I will be giving you an update on that I tried is In a Handful of Dust by Mindy McGinnis. I didn't love the first book. I tried this one, read a couple of pages, like quite a lot, and then I decided, you know what, I'm just not that invested in it, so this went into an unhaul. And that is what happened so far. Hi everybody, it's been a while. It's October 5th. I haven't felt like I wanted to film, so I allowed myself to just read and then sit down for a bigger update, which it's not even that big. I read towards the end of September this book. This has been my reread for the 7th time and I loved it as much as I did the first time. This book is really nostalgic to me. Yesterday I also had a movie night. I wanted to watch the movie ever since reading this book, but I just didn't have the time. So yesterday I made time for myself. So this book, oh, I love it so much. Katniss, even Jennifer Lawrence, just when I watched the movie, she was Katniss to me. The book, I love the political commentary that now that I'm older I can understand so much more than I did the first time, because the first time I read it, it was like, this is the first time I'm reading an English book and I don't understand a lot of things. This is interesting. I hope they end up together. I hope that things go well for them, and I hope he doesn't die because we all know Katniss is gonna survive if there are 3 books. Long story short, 5 out of 5 stars, adored it, loved it, and I want to reread it again, but I also want to read Catching Fire now. So that might happen soon. And the next book that I then picked up and read on October 1st is Wicked Fox by Cat Cho. Ah, this book. Okay, now that I finished it, I think I like it more than I did right immediately when I finished it. I think sitting with myself and with my thoughts, the way I have this book in my head right now just makes me like it more, but it's still a 3-star read. I love the world building, I love the characters, I thought that the atmosphere was done really well, and the cover, the cover is stunning. I mean, look at it. I don't keep a lot of 3-star reads on my shelf. Usually I just put them in a giveaway because I'm doing this clearing of the books that I don't want to keep if I hadn't enjoyed them, but I'm not ready to part with this yet because there is a special thing about this book that makes me want to keep it. I don't think that I'm gonna be continuing on. I am happy to have this book on my shelf, and honestly this is the perfect paranormal read for October. I think that it's not really scary, but it is kind of gloomy, spooky, cloudy weather type of book. Now I'm reading After by Anna Todd. I didn't really want to read it. I mean, I wanted to because I want to know what the hype is about and because I want to scratch it off my TBR, but I'm not feeling the contemporary vibe right now and I was hesitant to pick it up. I'm not gonna lie, it's fun. More fun than I thought I would have. Not that I had any like opinions about this book. I was just scared because people didn't like it and some people loved it, so I didn't know where I would fall. The update on After, I gave it 2 stars. I thought the relationship was toxic. Hardin was so cruel. He just wanted to hurt Tessa in everything that he did. And Tessa, she's stupid. I wish I could find a more offensive word, but she is just a dumbass for taking him back and just getting along with it just because they have sexual tension. Like, I'm sorry, but no. You have to set boundaries. Not that I would know. I set so many boundaries that I am sure I'm gonna be forever single. The last chapter disgusted me. And this is gonna be a spoiler, but Hardin basically showed bloody sheets from when he took Tessa's virginity to all his friends. That's enough said. I am glad that we have the movies. The movies I love. They are my favorite guilty pleasure and favorite thing to watch when I go out with my best friends. However, the book was... Moving on, I picked up Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. This is a reread. And this time around, I believe it's the 4th time around, and it's been quite a while since I read this book. I think it's been since 2018, but I'm not entirely sure. I read this book in 2 days. This is the fastest read that I had this month. Now that I'm older, I did pick up on a few things that I didn't before, and I'm just surprised, or maybe these are the things that I forgot the first time I read this, but then I watched the mini-series and the movie, and wow, picking up the subtleties from the book and in the film adaptation or the series adaptation just solidified that I had actually missed those things the first time. This book is still one of my favorite classics. However, I would rate it about 4 stars now, even though I absolutely adore it. I just think that the time in which I read it, obviously a lot has been going on, and I was not really that much in the mood for classics, despite having read it the fastest. And the last book that I finished actually yesterday is Percy Jackson and the Sea of Monsters. Initially, when I read this, I gave it 4 stars, and now the second time reading it a few years later, I gave it 3 stars. This is my least favorite book in the Percy Jackson series. I don't know why. Also, I'm not that big of a fan of Natalia. I thought in my head there's so much more plot and so much more that's happening, but no, these are such fast reads. Like, wow. I'm surprised. So yeah, I rated this to 3 stars. My next read will be Rhapsodic by Laura Talasa. I must say that I'm progressing quite nicely through my autumn TBR. Ignore the pile of books behind me. I'm filming 3 videos today. By the way, I forgot to write down 2 books. So I went ahead and adjusted that and wrote them down. And as I read a book, I color it in orange. And if I DNF or decide that I don't want to read it this round and I want to read it sometime in the future, but not for autumn, I color it in red. Or if it's a DNF, I color it in red. So let's talk about the changes that I have made. So I have decided against reading R.S. Gray's book because I'm not currently in the romance mood. Also, I don't know, I can just read it sometime later. This is where it gets tricky. So we have a reread that I have decided to DNF because I was bored of it. Now, this is New Moon by Stephanie Meyer. This is my favorite book in the series because I love when Bella gets depressed and then finds herself again without Edward. However, she is just such an annoying character, and the book itself is so bland. It has no character, and so I have decided to put this one down. I have started it again after 8 years of
or 9 years since I last read it. I read it in 8th grade. Next up, we have books that I have decided to unhaul and have given to my sister. They are on my sister's shelf. The Darkest Minds, I've had this book on my bookshelf for years, and if you watch me talk about this book in previous videos, I just wasn't that hyped up for it. I don't feel the pull to it, so I think I'm just gonna skip. Alright, these two I finished yesterday, and one is Rhapsodic by Laura Talasa. I rated this book 2 stars. Yes, I know what you're gonna say. I rate a lot of these books very low, and recently, I don't know if I've just been in a critic mood where I don't enjoy books as much. I'm not trying to be overly critical. I'm mainly, by the way, rating these books based on my enjoyment of them and not based on, I don't know, whether the writing was good or whether the characters were, you know, well developed, blah blah blah, all these things. No, I'm just rating based on my enjoyment of them, and I did not enjoy this. This was bland. This fell flat. Oh yeah, this is about Calypso, who's a siren, and a bargainer, I mean Des. People strike a bargain with the bargainer, and then he later comes to collect, and Calypso has like a bunch of debt. It's a pass for me. I didn't enjoy it. And then Inferno, again, insta-love, and the main character, the male main character here for the most of the book, except towards the end, could be replaced with a lamp. His personality could be replaced with a lamp or a couch, and nobody would notice because he's so boring. He is constantly in a tug of war with himself, whether to be good or to be evil, but suddenly this girl changes everything the moment he sees her. And a lot of plot holes in this book. I rated it 3 stars. Still a lot more enjoyable than this one. Oh, by the way, trigger warning for rape when it comes to Rhapsodic. But Inferno, I don't think I will be continuing with either of these two. And I'm happy to own it because it has a pretty cover. But I think eventually that I will unhaul it just because it wasn't that... Yeah. However, these two do have smutty romance, I suppose.
Hi everybody, a little quick check-in because we have quite a few updates since I last filmed the video. Also, since I last filmed the video, my dog also passed away. So editing the last clip was really sad for me. I don't want to make this sad, so let's just dive into the updates. One book that I wouldn't count a DNF, but I just decided that it's not for me. So the book that is not for me is An Ember in the Ashes by Sabata here. I got 100 pages into this and I realized that I'm not really interested. There's nothing really wrong with this book. For the majority of my reviews, I always say that the book is a decent read, but it just wasn't for me. And a major reason why I actually say that is I still think that the problem is in me. It's not really in the book because a lot of people love this book and a lot of people love, you know, the entire series or other books that I don't. We all have our tastes and maybe I'll enjoy it if I pick it up in a few years. It's really sad because I bought the first 3 books, so I decided to give them all to my sister. Then we have The Girl of Fire and Thorns by Ray Carson. Now this I do count as a DNF. I got quite a good chunk into this book and it made me uncomfortable. There is a lot of mention of food, so trigger warning if you have an eating disorder. The main character, I did like that we get more representation of people of all sizes. So the main character in this book is fat. And I love that for once we have a heroine that isn't this perfect girl. And, you know, I really love the representation. However, with the constant mention of food, it made me uncomfortable because I get triggered so easily. And not only that, judging by the reviews, a lot of the reviews pointed out that this book is an instance where the main character completely changes herself in order to fit into the society. I would have loved that this book just had more I am perfect the way I am. I love my body. I'm not changing myself. I'm not going to walk 1,000 miles just to lose weight just so that others could see my worth. Instead, I'm going to see my own worth. I wish this is what this book was about. I did say that I didn't finish it because, like I said, it's triggering for me. And another thing that bothered me about this book is that the main character was just 16. She got married on her 16th birthday to a guy who was married before. And, you know, she is already insecure. And with every sentence, whenever he is around, just because he's kind, she is looking for his validation. And I really don't want to read a book like that. Now, if I read it as, you know, Kay Howard, because a few months ago I did get a prompt in my TBR to read a book based on a song, and that song was from Six the Musical. And Six the Musical is basically a musical about 6 queens of Henry VIII, and one of them was just a child when she got married to Henry VIII, Catherine Howard. And this book fit that prompt perfectly. Now, if I got in from that perspective, you know, it would fit the prompt perfectly. However, yeah, I can't. I can't. So I'm gonna give this book to my sister. The first book I reread is The Host by Stephanie Meyer. The sad thing about this book is this is my last read that I read with my dog. So if you see a puzzle back there, my dog, basically his bed was here, Aris, the big one. His bed was here, and every night I would put on the audiobook and I would sit there and I would do the puzzle, and we would listen to an audiobook. And the last audiobook that we listened to these past few days that we had together was The Host. Listening to the audiobook enabled me to be there with him rather than stuck in my own world somewhere far away. And that way, this was like a group activity for us. I hadn't heard that dog snore more than when The Host audiobook was in the background. He, despite his illness and despite his pain, just slept so peacefully when The Host audiobook was in the background. And gosh, I love listening. If you are a pet owner and you know that your dog is sick, listening to them snore is like the best thing you can listen to. It's like music to your ears, because you know that they are peaceful and they are, you know, not in pain, and that they are breathing. So yeah, this, I love this book. Okay, now for the review. I love this book the first time I picked it up, which was a few years ago. This was my Twilight. When everybody was obsessed with Twilight, this was my Twilight. And this time around, it's still such a good book. However, I have such a different idea of the cave now and the characters, and I imagined it a lot more different this time around. Maybe it's because of the audiobook, I don't know. But yeah, it was a fun read, and I loved it still. It's very dear to me, and whenever I look at this book now, I just remember that Addis and I, this was our book. Obviously, after finishing a few books, I also read some other books in between, but they are not part of the Austen TBR, so I'm not going to mention them here. However, one of the unphysical, not physical books was The Martian by Andy Weir. And I read this book. Actually, I listened to it on audio, and I loved it. The main character is so funny. Like, I watched the movie and I wanted to read the book, but I had not anticipated that the main character would be so funny. So I think I rated it 4 stars in the end, but it was a funny book, and it was a nice contrast to the gloomy situation that I was in with my dog. It kept my mind off it. And then I read The Host, and then I moved on to Incarcerated by Catherine Fisher. I don't know what it is, I just can't seem to remember my ratings, so I'm gonna go on Goodreads and check. So I ended up rating this book 4 stars. This is like a steampunky book that the world is kind of all over the place. It takes you a while, because it's so complex, it takes you a while to figure out what's going on and how to imagine everything, but once you get into it, it's actually really fun. I don't know why, but it reminds me of Dune. Maybe because I read Dune before The Host. The second book is Safik, and Safik here is one of the people that escaped this prison called Incarcerated. And I think the second book, it will be all about him and freeing the prisoners and blah blah blah, overthrowing the government or whatever. Oh gosh, yeah, I don't read a lot of steampunky books. I don't, but this one was fun. I don't think that I will ever be rereading it again, but I am interested enough to continue with the second book. The last book for this update that I read is The 13th Tale by Diane Setterfield. This is basically kind of like a mystery. If you've read Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, you'd know that it is a book about a writer coming in to interview this celebrity and basically writing their autobiography. And this book is basically set like on the same, has the same principle. This is also a BBC TV program, which I'm probably gonna watch sometime soon. The reason why this book has been a 3-star read for me is because, one, I'm not that into mysteries. This is a gothic tale of sorrow, of loss. Storytelling is fascinating and it is beautifully written, but I'm not one for dark stories and gothic books like mysteries. This is also historical fiction. What I would describe it as is a mixture between Haunting of Hill House and more like Haunting of Bly Manor. If you liked the Haunting of Bly Manor, I think you're gonna love this. And a lot of the story revolves around the Angel Field house that's supposed to be like haunted. And what I'm reading now is Get You the Moon by Hasnita. This is my friend's book. I just have to say this every time because I'm so proud. And I am 57 pages into it. I'm on chapter 14. I love how this book has a lot of social commentary. This is also like a romance book, but it really tackles a lot of topics from racism, sexism to rape and, you know, sexual harassment. And this is also a dual point of view book told from Scarlett and Levi's perspective. And they have such an interesting dynamic, and I love the chemistry between the characters. And so far, I'm actually really enjoying it. It's a fast read. Hey loves, it's been a while since I checked in, so I have a lot of updates for you. But first off, let's just go through some of my most recent skips or DNFs that I decided I'm not going to force myself to read this season of autumn. And autumn is also almost coming to a close, so yeah, I'm running out of time, but I'm closing it early, 20 days early. 30 days, a month early actually, because I am almost done with all of these. Now, my plan for this autumn TBR was not to read every single book on this list, but give as many of them as I want or could a chance. And I am very proud of myself. At least I've decided what to do with them. If I did not get to it and realize this book, it does not interest me enough, I have taken it off my TBR, and that is a win in my book. Okay, so don't know which books I mentioned already, but I'm just gonna go through the ones that I don't think that I have. We have Fallen by Lauren Kate, I think. Took it off my TBR entirely. I'm not gonna read it. Then I decided to skip From Blood and Ash, but put it on, it's still on my TBR for some time whenever in the future. I can't tell you when. The same goes for The Fiery Heart by Rochelle Mead. I am still planning on reading it. However, I postponed this one to 2022, next year. Another skip has been The Rain by Virginia Bergen. Listen, I don't know what's wrong with me. I want to reread this book, but I'm just putting it off, and I'm fine with that. It's fine. I'm just gonna read it whenever I get to it next year. I forgot to take Divergent out. It's somewhere over on my bookshelf, but Divergent has also been a skip. However, for this one, I'm not entirely sure that I want to reread it ever again. I've also decided that Verity by Colleen Hoover is gonna be a skip for later when I'm in the mood. Now let's move on to the books that I have read, because I have quite a few updates. Okay, last I checked in, I was reading Get You the Moon, and this ended up being, I think, a 3.75 rounded up to 4 stars. This book has a lot of heavy topics. It tackles a lot of topics. It tries to do a lot, and it is hard to read. If you're very sensitive to that, I would just suggest take it easy, take it slow, and read with caution. But all in all, I thought this was very cute. That Levi was a great character. For Scarlett, this has dual point of view of Levi and Scarlett. For Scarlett, I was just a little bit on the verge of wanting to punch her and liking her. I could never decide, because some chapters, she just really needs a push. She needs a support system, you know. So yeah, that's what ended up being. It's a cute romantic story of two characters who are kind of like rivals at school. Then I moved on to Shadow of Night. This has been my comfort read. However, I'm gonna tell you honestly, this book is long, and I'm not saying that it drags. I actually read it in 2 days, but this book is long, and that means it's intimidating. And this has been a reread. The third book is gonna be a first-time read for me. 5-star read, as always, Diana and Matthew. This is like a perfect paranormal academics kind of book, historical fiction. Especially this book is very historical fiction. I love it so much. I love the paranormal aspect. I love the romance. I love the just everything, the magic, and oh, so good. Then I picked up A Deal with the Elf King by Elise Kova. This was a book that I saw on booktube first, and I bought it because of booktube. And this book has such a wonderful like magic system and the world building. It's about Luella, and she has been born into this like world where every 100 years there is a human queen shipped off to marry a fae king to restore balance to nature. Without her, the nature dies. And at the beginning of this book, the human queen hasn't been found, so there is some conflict that, and the elf, why do I say the fae king? Sorry, I meant the elf king comes to the territory, finds his queen who was hidden from him through magic, and it was all unintentional from Luella's side. And it turns out that Luella has these magical powers, but the problem is that with every generation the human queen's power grows weaker, and whenever she gives power to nature, she doesn't have a lot to give. So sooner or later, eventually Luella's gonna die, so they try to figure out a way to stop this system of nature requiring a human queen's magic, if that makes sense. But with them breaking the system, it also means that Luella and, you know, her husband are broken apart or whatever. And Luella, as much as she hates him, she, you know, as all enemies to lovers books, she begins to not respect him. She begins to grow fond of him, I guess. I think I rated this 5 stars. It was a really fun read. Okay, then I moved on to Clockwork Angel by Cassandra Clare. Clockwork Angel has been another reread. I think I first read this in 2014, and this was a complete 5-star read. I forgot how funny Will is and how witty Tessa is. Like, her comebacks are everything to me. And Jem, he's such a sweetheart. I've also come to appreciate Jessamine. Not appreciate, I understand her character a little bit more, because she lives in this world full of monsters, and she would rather just be ignorant. She would rather, you know, be normal, I guess, and that's all she wants. And as I was a teenager, first time reading this book, I really hated her. I didn't like her. I didn't understand that, but now I just do. I get what it's like to want to be normal. Okay, and the last book I read is Kiss the Fae by Natalia Jaster. First of all, the writing of this is beautiful. It's kind of like poetry, but it's also very tedious. It's very dense, condensed, it's a slow book. It's a slow read. It's very descriptive. I loved it. I really, really enjoyed it. I forgot how much I rated it. I think I rated this book 4 stars. And it was a really, really fun read. Our main character, Lark, she and her sisters end up trespassing. Something happens, doesn't matter, they end up trespassing. So there are 3 solitary fae. One who rules the sky, one who rules the woodlands, and one who rules the river. And for Lark's story, she gets taken by the one who rules the sky, Cerulean, and he's the one to give her a punishment. If she gets to the peak of the mountain in 30 days and doesn't die, she wins the test. However, her sisters, one goes to the woodlands, to the fae of the woodlands, and one goes to the fae of the river, and they have to each pass their own tests in their own amount of time. So not in 13 days for everybody. One could have it in weeks, one could have years, whoever knows. But they each have to pass. One of them loses, they all die, okay? And the first book is about Lark, like I said, this sky area, and the second book is, I think it's about Juniper, who goes into the woodlands, the forest and stuff. And then the third book I think is going to be about Cove, who goes into the river area. I know I'm butchering it. This is why I usually don't describe books, also because I don't remember them that well. Okay, and then the last book that we have that I haven't read, but I have also decided to skip, and I forgot to tell you about it, is Crescent City. I decided to switch this out for a different book, so just so that when I do my 2022 TBR, I still have the same amount of books. So instead of reading this year, I'm gonna put it for next year. I'm just gonna tell you, I'm gonna be rereading The Mortal Instruments still. And then once I'm done, I'm completely done with my autumn TBR. It is November 22nd, and that means that winter starts in a month. So I finished a month early. Granted, I had a lot of skips and DNFs, but you know what? It's fine. All of the books that are in orange or in gray are actually the books that I read. The ones that are in red, I've decided to unhaul or skip for whatever reason. And there's nothing that I have specifically to say about The Mortal Instruments. I know that it's a reread. I know that the rating probably won't change. Now let's just see how many books are in red and how many books, including The Mortal Instruments, I finished. 15 books I left unfinished from my autumn TBR or skipped, and 19 books that I finished. I think that concludes the video. Yay! Thank you guys for sticking with me, and I hope you have a lovely, lovely day.